Okay, so today we're doing something a bit different. We're taking a deep dive into English vocab specifically aimed at those of you prepping for postgraduate entrance exams.
Yeah, you know those lists and lists of words you have to learn?
Ugh, tell me about it.
We're going to make them a bit less painful, hopefully. We're looking at Day 10, Unit 3, 10-23 degrees from your materials,
Mm.
but not just definitions, how to use them, how to remember them, how they show up on the exam. So you're not just memorizing, you're understanding.
Right, because what's the point of knowing a word if you can't actually use it?
Exactly.
And this section covers quite a range, doesn't it? We've got exhibition words, then we go into prohibition, there's a whole cluster around awe, and then that play brute that pops up in a bunch of places, even stuff about marriage, support, inheritance, kind of all over the place, but that's good. It keeps things interesting.
It does. Let's jump right in then, starting with, like you said, exhibition words, display and exhibit. These trip people up all the time.
They do seem pretty similar on the surface.
Yeah, they both have this idea of showing something, making it visible. But think of display as more general, like that team put on an amazing display. Could be a sports team, could be dancers, even just a really well-organized project.
Right, so it's not necessarily about a specific thing being shown.
Exactly. Like in your materials, there's the example, the AAAS displays great enthusiasm for liberal education. They're not literally putting enthusiasm on a shelf. It's about showing that attitude.
Okay, so it's about the act of showing, not necessarily what's being shown.
Right. Now, exhibit, that tends to be more formal, more deliberate. Think museum exhibits.
Makes sense.
And it can be the actual thing on display. That new exhibit is going to tour the country next year, meaning some art pieces or artifacts. But it can also be like display, about a quality someone shows. Your book has whatever inborn differences two people may exhibit in their abilities to memorize. So again, showing a trait.
So the key difference is that level of formality. Exhibit is more like a curated presentation, whereas display is more general.
You got it. And on the exam, they'll try to trick you with that. So really pay attention to whether the focus is on a carefully chosen object or if it's more about the act of showing something, whether it's tangible or not.
Makes sense. Okay, on to the next batch. Prohibition. We've got prohibit, forbid, and ban.
All about stopping something, but different shades of meaning and formality. Prohibit is your official by-the-book word, like smoking is prohibited in this building. Think laws and regulations.
Okay, very official. Forbid, is that more casual?
Yeah, more personal, like my doctor forbade me from eating spicy food. It's a direct order, but not necessarily from a law or something. Or she forbade them from bringing it up again, meaning a specific command, that sense of personal authority.
So someone in charge, but not like the government or something?
Exactly. And then you've got the Forbidden City, which is a great example of how historically certain places were off limits.
Oh yeah, that's a good one to remember.
Right. Then there's ban, which is kind of like prohibit in that it's official, but it often implies a stronger action, like they banned all single-use plastics in the city. It's a sweeping prohibition.
So if prohibit is setting the rule, ban is what happens when you break it.
Kind of, yeah. And ban can also mean being excluded from something, like he was banned from the library for making too much noise.
So for the exam, the trick is figuring out who's doing the stopping. Is it a formal authority or is it more personal?
Exactly. That'll help you choose the right word.
Okay, let's move on to all words, starting with formidable, which always sounds a bit scary to me.
Yeah, it can be. It's about something or someone that makes you feel a bit intimidated because they're so powerful or impressive, like she was a formidable opponent in the debate. You don't want to mess with her.
Right, not someone to underestimate.
But it's not always negative. Like one of the examples in your study material says, even Tomasini calls him an unpretentious musician with no air of the formidable conductor about him. So here, it's more about the skill and presence this guy has, even though he's humble.
So formidable is about inspiring respect, maybe even a bit of fear, but not necessarily in a bad way.
You got it. And awe, that's the feeling formidable things can inspire. Like standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon, that feeling of being totally overwhelmed by its size and beauty.
I get that.
As a verb, it means to inspire that feeling. Like her performance awed the audience. They were completely captivated.
And here's where we get to the classic mix-up. Awful.
Oh yeah, people confuse this one all the time. Nowadays, awful mostly just means really bad, like that movie was awful. But it can still be used in that older sense of inspiring awe, though that's less common.
So context is key with awful.
Absolutely. Especially in the exam. Like there's an example in your prep book. The problem with being a grown-up is that there's an awful lot of serious stuff to deal with. Here, awful just means a lot, like a huge amount.
Okay, so you really have to pay attention to how it's being used.
Right. Awful and odd. They might look similar, but their meanings can be totally different.
All right, let's move on to the plausible root words. We've got plausible, deploy, employment, and plot. Seems like a random bunch.
It might seem that way, but they're all connected by this idea of spreading out or having multiple parts.
Interesting. Okay, so plausible.
Plausible means something seems reasonable, like it could be true, like she gave a plausible explanation for being late. It all fits together, even if you're not totally sure it's the whole truth.
So it makes sense, even if it might not be true.
Exactly. Your materials had the example. The supposed importance of influentials derives from a plausible-sounding but largely untested theory, meaning it sounds good, but nobody's really checked if it's actually true.
Sounds like a lot of things I read online, honestly.
Maybe. Then there's deploy, which originally was all about military stuff, like the general deployed troops to the border, spreading them out strategically.
Okay, so moving things into position.
Right. But now it's used more broadly about using any kind of resources effectively. Like she deployed her negotiation skills to get a better deal.
So using your skills strategically.
You got it.
Yeah.
And your book has kids need plenty of practice, deploying effective organizational skills. So again, using something in a planned way to achieve a goal.
Okay, that makes sense. What about employment? Where does spreading out come in there?
That one's a bit more metaphorical. Think about all the different jobs and tasks within a company. People are spread out across those roles.
Ah.
Okay. And the example from your materials is about finding your unique value in your field of employment, meaning your specific area of work within that whole system. And then the opposite is unemployment, where people are sadly not spread out among jobs.
Right, because they don't have one.
Exactly. Then we have plot. One meaning is about the events in a story, how they unfold and connect. Again, multiple parts spreading out over time.
Makes sense.
And the other meaning is a secret plan, usually something shady, like they plotted to overthrow the government. So you can imagine the steps of the plan being laid out, like on a map.
Okay, I see the connection.
Right. And in your study materials, it talks about Dickens creating complex plots, meaning the intricate storylines of his novels.
So lots of different meanings for plot, but all linked back to that idea of multiple parts or spreading out.
Exactly. And on the exam, pay attention to whether plot is about a story or a secret plan.
Right, context is everything. Okay, let's move on to a topic everyone's familiar with, marriage.
Ah, yes. We've got engage, marital, pregnant, divorce, spouse, and household.
Engage always seems to have a million meanings.
It does. It can be about capturing someone's attention, like that lecture really engaged my mind, or about hiring someone for a service. We engaged a lawyer to help with the contract.
Right, lots of different uses.
But the one you really need to know for this section is about being involved in something. Like, they engaged in a heated debate.
So participating actively.
Right. And the noun engagement can mean a promise to marry or just a scheduled appointment.
So lots to keep track of with engage.
It is. Then marital is pretty straightforward. Just means related to marriage. Like they went to couples therapy to work through their marital problems. Easy peasy.
And then pregnant has both the literal meaning and the figurative one.
You got it. Literally, it's about carrying a baby. But figuratively, it can mean full of meaning, like her silence was pregnant with unspoken anger.
Yeah.
You know, something's about to happen.
So it's like it's full of potential, ready to burst.
Exactly. Divorce and spouse are pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, those are pretty clear.
And your materials talk about a disappearing spouse, which highlights that spouse can be either husband or wife.
Right. And household is about everyone living under one roof.
Yep. And they often use this word in surveys and statistics, like that example in your book about Indian households.
So a useful word for understanding family structures.
Definitely.
Okay, next up is a small cluster. Support, uplift. Just 2 words. Uphold and hoist.
Uphold is about maintaining or supporting something, like the judge upheld the lower court's ruling, or they upheld the family tradition of gathering for the holidays.
So keeping something going.
Right. The exam example talks about too many patents being upheld, meaning their validity is being supported, even if maybe they shouldn't be.
So it's like holding something up so it doesn't fall.
Exactly. Now, hoist is more physical, like they hoisted the flag up the pole. It involves lifting something heavy.
Okay, very literal.
But it can also be used metaphorically, like The scandal hoisted him into the spotlight. Suddenly everyone was paying attention to him, whether he wanted it or not.
So uphold is about supporting or maintaining, and hoist is about physically lifting or suddenly raising something up.
Precisely.
All right, on to inheritance. We've got heir, heritage, and inherit.
Heir is the person who inherits. Inherit is the action, and heritage is the broader idea of what's passed down.
Okay, that makes sense. So heir is specifically the person who's entitled to something after someone dies.
Right. And inherit can be about money or property, but also about qualities passed down genetically, like she inherited her mother's blue eyes.
And even about taking on a role like he inherited the family business.
Exactly. And then heritage is about all the things a culture or society values and passes down through generations. Could be traditions, buildings, stories, language, all that stuff.
So it's the whole package of who we are and where we come from.
You got it. And your materials have a great example about embracing cultural heritage on Mauna Kea. It's about respecting and honoring the history and culture of that place.
So for the exam, remember that heritage is much broader than just money or possessions.
Right. It's about the whole legacy we inherit from those who came before us.
Okay, 2 more clusters to go. This one's a bit of a strange pair. Cat-related vocabulary with scatter and catalogue.
You wouldn't think they're related, would you? But they both come from this idea of throwing or distributing things.
Interesting.
Scatter is pretty literal, like the wind scattered the leaves across the yard, or the birds scattered when the cat appeared, spreading out in different directions.
Makes sense.
But it can also be used figuratively about things being disorganized. Your study book has, the goals of the prize givers seem as scattered as the criticism, meaning they're all over the place, no clear focus.
So lack of order, basically.
Right. Now, catalog, that's about organizing information, making a list of things.
So more controlled distribution.
Exactly. Like the museum published a catalog of all its paintings. So a systematic way of presenting information about a collection.
Okay, that makes sense. So scatter is about things spreading out, often randomly, while catalog is about intentional, organized listing.
You got it.
All right, last one. We've got some words that sound similar. Appetite, petition, impetus, and impulse.
These are all about wanting or doing something, but in different ways.
Okay, so appetite is pretty basic. We all know what that means, right?
Yeah, a desire for food.
Yeah.
But it can also be a strong desire for anything. Like, he had an insatiable appetite for knowledge, meaning he always wanted to learn more.
So a strong craving.
Exactly. And your materials have a great example. Technology has such an insatiable appetite for eating up human jobs, meaning it's constantly replacing jobs, almost like it's hungry for them.
Wow, that's kind of scary, actually.
It is. Then there's petition, which is a formal request, usually signed by lots of people, to try to change something. Like, they started a petition to save the local park from being developed.
So a way to get your voice heard.
Exactly. And your book mentions a petition last year about banning fake lawns, showing how people use petitions to try to influence policy.
Makes sense. So appetite is a personal desire, and petition is a group effort to change something. What about impetus?
Impetus is the force that gets something going, the driving force behind an action. Like, her passion for social justice was the impetus for starting the nonprofit.
So the motivation or inspiration.
Right. And finally, impulse is a sudden urge to do something, often something you shouldn't do.
Like, I had an impulse to buy that expensive dress even though I couldn't afford it.
Exactly. And there's an example in your materials about kids controlling their nastier impulses. So those sudden urges to do something bad or mean.
So impetus is the driving force and impulse is the sudden urge.
You got it.
All right, one final cluster, and it's a big one. Alarm words. Alarm, panic, caution, precaution, prudent, alert, and even slip.
Wow, that is a lot. But they all relate to danger or potential problems.
Alarm is the most basic, I guess. That feeling of danger or a warning signal.
Right. Panic is when that fear takes over and you can't think straight. Like, everyone panicked when the fire alarm went off.
Not a good situation.
Definitely not. Caution is about being careful, taking steps to avoid danger. Like, use caution when driving in icy conditions.
So being aware of the risk.
Right. And a precaution is a specific action you take to prevent something bad from happening. Like, wearing a helmet is a good precaution when cycling.
So planning ahead.
Exactly. Prudent is about making wise decisions, thinking about the long-term consequences, like it's prudent to save money for retirement.
Being responsible.
Yep. Alert means being watchful and aware of potential danger, like The guards were on high alert after the security breach. Or an alert can be a warning signal itself, like a tornado alert.
So both a state of mind and a signal.
Right. And then we have slip, which can be about literally losing your footing, like I slipped on the ice. Or it can be about a decline in quality or standards, like her grades started to slip after she got a part-time job.
So a negative change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And your book mentions the idiom pink slip, meaning getting fired.
Yeah.
That comes from the idea of your job security slipping away.
Right. That's a tough one.
It is. And remember, slippery describes something that makes you slip, and a slipper is a type of shoe. Don't mix those up.
So a lot to remember with these alarm words. The key is to think about the level of intensity and whether it's about preventing something bad or reacting to it.
Exactly.
Well, I think we've covered everything in this section. That was a lot of vocab.
It was. But hopefully now you have a better grasp of these words and how they're used.
And more importantly, how to remember them and use them effectively on your exams.
Exactly. Don't just memorize definitions. Think about how these words are used in real-world situations, how they relate to each other.
And try using them in your own writing and speaking. That's the best way to make them stick.
And think about this. How will a strong vocabulary benefit you beyond just the exams? Being able to understand and use these words will help you in your studies, your career, and in life in general.
It's an investment that pays off in so many ways. All right, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and good luck with your exam prep.